My family was away this past week on the East Coast, dropping our daughter back off at college, doing college tours with our son Clay in Boston, leaving me behind here all alone. It's so good to have you all back. I was such the pathetic, stereotypical bachelor, eating a bunch of junk food, using one plate and fork all week, staying up way too late watching reruns of inappropriate shows of Game of Thrones, with all its swords and gore and cannonballs flying everywhere. Actually reminded me of that old cable TV show Mythbusters. Do any of you remember that show? This one segment had been done up in the Bay Area. They were trying to test the old myth that water can stop a cannonball. And if you've ever seen the show, you wouldn't be surprised that they found a real old-fashioned iron cannon, lined up a bunch of barrels filled with water, and fired the cannon directly at the barrels. The cannonball went straight through the barrels, ricocheted off of a rock, and landed in a neighborhood a half a mile away. It went into someone's house, up their stairs, over a bed with a sleeping couple in it, out their wall, and hit a minivan a few more blocks away. Nobody was hurt, thank God. Mythbusters paid all of the damages, but it was big news in the Bay Area for quite some time. And it kind of reminds me of Easter. Please stick with me here just for a minute, because I think we all have a tendency to way underestimate the power of this day, what it's meant to the history of our world, and maybe more importantly, what it can mean for each and every one of us today. Every Easter, as I prepare my sermon, I'm always amazed at how the biblical scholars and commentators spend so much of their time and energy trying to prove that the resurrection actually happened, all of the reasons that it makes sense. And don't get me wrong, I believe in the historicity of the resurrection with all of my heart. I believe it's central to our faith, but I think for most of us, even more important than did the resurrection happen, is does it make any difference? Does this resurrection really have the power to do anything in my life? To bring back the dead things inside of me? What does it mean for us right now at this moment in human history with all the stuff that we're dealing with here in our nation, on our own city streets, in the Middle East, all around the world? To be completely honest, I don't think we care anywhere near as much about proving the resurrection as we do participating in it. Because you can ask and question exactly what happened that day 2,000 years ago, but no one can deny that something was released into our world that day that completely shifted the entire trajectory of human life on this planet from that day forward. Some kind of power was certainly released into our world on that first Easter morning that has the ability to bind up the most deeply broken hearts, to forgive our biggest failures, to release our shame, and heal our deepest wounds. It's a resurrection power that certainly Peter experienced firsthand. The last time we had seen Peter, he was there at the Last Supper, in the upper room, still completely gung-ho, resisting Jesus washing his feet, cutting off the soldier's ear, kind of Game of Thrones-ish, swearing up and down that he would never abandon Jesus, even if everyone else fell away. It was just a few hours later that Peter, maybe like all of us, learned some eye-opening truths about himself, things about our human nature and what fear can do to one's courage, to one's soul, to the soul of one's nation, even to our most deeply and dearly held beliefs. After all of his denials and betrayals, after Jesus' death and crucifixion, most of the disciples went back to the upper room to be together, to mourn together, to process all that they had been through in those final days together. But not Peter. Peter bolted. He ran away, retreated back to his boat, back to his fishing, back to his old, safe life before Jesus. Anyone in here feel like you've been in retreat the last couple of years? So Jesus doesn't ask Peter to come to him. He goes to Peter, appearing on the beach at the edge of the water, calling out to Peter and his companions, "My friends, aren't you catching any fish?" "Nothing," they all reply back. And so Jesus yells out, "Try dropping your nets on the other side of the boat." And it's so interesting on a couple of different levels. First, and I don't know if you're going to remember this, but this was not the first time that Jesus was trying to give Peter advice on how to fish. In fact, the first time, Peter got a little bugged. You remember that with Jesus? But nevertheless, he did what Jesus asked, and they ended up with such an overwhelming catch that it led Peter to drop his nets, to leave everything he had and become one of Jesus' disciples. But not before Peter said to Jesus, "Get away from me. You do not want me. I am a sinful man." It wasn't all that different from his reaction during the Last Supper. "You want to wash my feet? Are you kidding me? Get away from me. I am not worthy to have you touch me." And so, this resurrection appearance on the beach was on one level a total flashback to the very first day Peter ever met Jesus, to the day when Peter's life was turned upside down and inside out by this itinerant peasant preacher that he went on to follow and serve for the rest of his life. And you can never completely understand what happens next if you don't remember what happened that first time, how Peter had been miffed at Jesus, because this time, the moment that Peter realizes it is Jesus on the beach, it's like nothing or nobody can keep him away. It says in the scriptures, he just jumped right out of the boat into the water and started swimming as fast as he could towards the shore. After all they had been through together, then after all Peter had done, denying and betraying and running away, all Peter could think about was getting back to Jesus as quickly as he could. And when he gets to the shore, Jesus has already made a fire and has fish cooking and invites Peter to come and have breakfast with him. And then it says in John's Gospel, when they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," Peter said. "You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. Peter was hurt. Biblical scholars sometimes suggest that perhaps in Jesus asking that question 3 times, asking him to feed his sheep 3 times, it was like he was repealing each one by one of the denials the night before. And then, at the end, when it's all over, Jesus says a second time, follow me. The exact same thing that he had said to Peter 3 years earlier. But this time it was different. After all they had been through together, all of the water that had passed under that bridge, because of Easter morning, because of the resurrection, there was a new kind of power at play in their interaction with each other. A power that would change Peter's life and the planet Earth's direction for all time. It's a power that's still available to us today if we'll simply open our hearts to receive it. So what was this power? First and foremost, it was the power to forgive. Without Easter morning, our tendency is like Peter's, to run away from each other, to cut ourselves off from each other. You will never wash my feet. Stay away from me. I am a sinful man. Could we possibly see this isolating tendency any more on display right now than in our nation and in our world? How often is it our unwillingness to forgive ourselves that becomes the greatest stumbling block to our unwillingness to forgive others? Pastor and theologian Tim Keller puts it this way. Most of us have been formed by a culture that nourishes revenge and mocks grace. The great crisis of our time is vindictiveness. You look at all that's going on around us right now, and it seems like everyone is angry and hurt, self-righteous and judgmental, and maybe as a result, at least a little embarrassed and ashamed. We know this is not who we want to be or how we want to live, but we just aren't sure how to be any different at this point. Andrew Young says the problem with anger is it's contagious. And before you know it, you become no better than the one who has perpetrated the wrong in the first place. But you and I, as followers of Jesus Christ, have been called to a new, radical kind of community. A community that forgives one another, that takes on temporary suffering in order to attain a greater good, in order to help heal our world. Only the resurrection has the power to break the cycle of fear and resentment, isolation, and blame of everything that's wrong in our world right now. But this power is also a power to transform friendships. When Jesus kept asking Peter over and over, "Do you love me?" it was clear this was not a God who was primarily concerned with our behavior or our beliefs. It wasn't about what you do or how obedient you are, what you believe, or even if you have all of your stuff together. No. Jesus' central question to Peter was, do you love me? Do you love me, and will you love one another? Despite their fears, despite their failures, despite their insecurities and betrayals and crazy beliefs. Love me, love my sheep. Our entire faith began when Abraham was called a friend of God. One of Jesus' last speeches, he said, "No longer do I call you servants, but I call you friends." Even in this passage, the Greek word that Jesus uses for love here is phileo, which means when Jesus is asking Peter, "Do you love me?" what he's really asking is, "Do you want to be my friend?" Do you see it? As followers of Jesus, we are part of a community that is being asked to be friends with God so that we can be freed up to become friends with all of those around us. Because of this morning, because of this resurrection power, you and I have what it takes to be friends, to be in relationship and remain friends, even with those with whom we disagree, with those from other belief systems, those even on the other side of the political aisle. Because the power of the resurrection is a power to join Christ in refusing to take sides or to choose teams. Do you love me? Then love my sheep. Can I ask you, who have you lost touch with? Stopped talking to, crossed off your list or out of your life, that this resurrection power may be calling you back to? And finally, because of this morning, we have been given the true gift of real fulfillment. It is a calling to service, to roll up our sleeves and get to work. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. There are so many different ways to get involved. When Jesus finds Peter on that beach, back in the boat, back where he feels comfortable and safe, he knows that what Peter needs isn't a vacation. He needs a new vocation. He's not sitting on the sidelines because he needs a break. Peter needs to renew his call. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of David Weekley or David Weekley Homes. They're one of the largest, most successful home building companies in the U.S. David Weekley was an elder at my old church in Houston, and it had always been his dream to get rich, retire in his 40s, build a beautiful home on the cliffs of Carmel, California, because Carmel is so much nicer than Houston, and spend the rest of his days eating lobster and looking out over the Pacific Ocean. But then somewhere along the line, David got serious about his faith. He started a foundation and siphoned off some of his earnings to help fund a lot of beautiful work being done for the poor and the hungry and the disenfranchised. Didn't take long before David realized the work of his foundation was the most joyful and fulfilling work he had ever done. And yet he still managed to retire in his 40s, to build that big house in Carmel, where he spent a year or two eating lobsters and looking out over the ocean before he became restless. His foundation was inevitably getting smaller. He had less money, and he found that he was able to give less and less grants away until David Weekley asked the board of his old company that still carried his name if they would take him back. If he could come back and serve as their CEO once again, but take all of his earnings and pour it back into his foundation so that he could continue doing the most fulfilling work of his life. There is a very real power, greater than any cannonball, that's been released into our world because of this morning. And I don't know of any other time, at least in my lifetime, that we've needed it more. It is the power to forgive at a time when forgiveness has become such a scarce commodity. It's the power to be a friend, first to God, but then to all of God's children. To remain friends and continue to love even those we totally disagree with. And it is the power to bring a fulfillment to our lives that we have never imagined possible before, as we take seriously this lifelong calling to feed God's sheep. Our world desperately needs more forgiveness, more friendship, more fulfillment right now. And there is a very real power available for all three if we will dare to believe that God can take the dead things inside of us and breathe new life into them. Maybe even use them to do something beautiful. So my question for you this morning is, where could you use a little resurrection these days? Anyone here who could use a fresh start? For he is risen. He is risen indeed. Amen.